Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. We have another story about the women's meeting in Edinburgh on Saturday. Kelly J. Keane, known as Posey Parker, is now making a formal complaint to Police Scotland over her treatment and the biased way in which the police enforced order at the event. It was almost as though the women who organised the event were seen as the oppressors and the enemy, and all the trans lobby were seen as the good guys, even though, as we reported earlier, they were the ones causing damage, writing graffiti, vandalising and hurling abuse at women who were standing up for their own rights and freedoms, and the freedoms of others who do not have a voice to give. And that is why I think Kelly J. Keane is a marvellous woman. She doesn't care. She has got that voice. She is prepared to stand up. And now she's standing up to authorities. She's looking the police in the eye and asking serious questions as to what is going on with the treatment of women in Scotland. And I don't think they're prepared fully for the power of Kelly J. Keane. Be interesting to see. Let's have a look at this story, see what's going on, see why she is so mad and filled, I think, with righteous anger and indignation over what happened to her on Saturday. Here goes. Right, so Kelly J. Keane, aka Posey Parker, is to lodge a formal complaint over biased policing at the Let Women Speak rally. The famed women's rights campaigner, also known as Posey Parker, as I say, said it was insane that she needed the protection of 20 officers just to get into her own event amid chaotic and intimidating scenes in Edinburgh on Saturday. She went there to speak, to rally the troops, to express her concern over the removal of rights and freedoms and protections of women. And then all these inadequate, tiny-cocked men turned up, all pretending that they were women. None of them are. They're all mad. Oh, look at me, I'm in a frock and wearing lippy, I must be a woman. No, you're just a mental man who gets off on dressing like a woman. And they all sit there, and they hate women so much. This is wonder why they want to be women so much. They hate the women so much they were abusing them. How dare you be a real woman? Only us men can be real women. All that mentally ill. Not one of them there that couldn't do or benefit from a quick session with a psychiatrist, I think. Anyway, women's rights campaigner Kelly J. Keane is to lodge a formal complaint with Scotland's Chief Constable amid the fallout from a free speech rally in Edinburgh at the weekend. This follows news that J.K. Rowling wading into a furious row after a video emerged of a police officer appearing to manhandle an older woman at Miss Keane's Let Women Speak event at the Mound. Miss Keane today said she will lodge the formal complaint over the police stewarding of the event after participants said they were subject to biased policing. She said, I'll be making a formal complaint. I think it's about time we really took on the police. Scottish women have had enough. Scottish women are not important in Scotland. And we know this because the Hate Crime Act does not protect women. There is no protection over sex in Scotland. Now, fortunately, the 2010 Equality Act, a UK-wide act, does. It makes sex a protected characteristic. And again, fortunately, it is a superior law. That is to say, it sits over and above Scottish law. It is the law that ultimately, where you may break a Scottish law because, where you may obey something in Scottish law because there is no protection of sex in the Hate Crime Act. There is in the 2010 Equality Act, and that's superior. So anyone who does it is not, it may not break the Hate Crime Act, but it's certainly breaking the Equality Act. And of course, on top of that, and even more superior to the 2010 Equality Act, is the European Convention on Human Rights, which is ultimately there, and that also protects sex. So there is protections there. However, this hate bill does not do it, and we know why. Because at that point, you would be allowed to put men into female spaces, and you wouldn't be allowed to complain. And if you were a woman complaining that a trans man had come into I say a trans man, a man who likes to wear a frock, comes into a woman's safe space, if you complained, you would be the one breaking the law. That's the madness that you've got in Scotland at the moment. Anyway, she was complaining and she said, In order for me, this is Kelly J. Keane, she said, in order for me to get to my own event, I had to have about 20 officers walk me safely onto the event on the streets of Edinburgh in broad daylight. A 50-year-old woman going to speak about women's rights had to have 20 officers around her to actually get into the event and safely leave. This is insane. Miss Keane added, I'm 5'1" and I would have had the impression that a big burly police officer seeing a couple of 20-year-old blokes screaming in my face that I'm a Nazi. I don't even want him to be on my side. I just want him to uphold the law and be balanced. He would probably notice that the size differential and who would most likely to be afraid and hurt, and would tell those big burly blokes to back off. And when you see that they don't, and they tell you to be quiet, love, it's no wonder police have an issue with male violence. Miss Keane, also known as Posy Parker, contrasted Edinburgh on Saturday with her experience at a previous rally in Glasgow's George Square last February. She said Glasgow police were brilliant. They kept a good distance and no activists were allowed to come and intimidate women. It was a really, really good event, and Edinburgh could learn a lot from how Glasgow was handled. Edinburgh don't care. The police don't really care. The police are acting on behalf of their bosses, their paymasters. And who's the big bad boss of the police? It's Joe Farrell. And who owns Joe Farrell? The SNP. So Joe Farrell's going to do exactly what she's told. And Joe Farrell will be told, no, you've got to make life hard for these women. They cannot have their rights. They cannot have their freedoms. They cannot be allowed to stand there and demand protection and safety for women and children when we've got trans people whose rights must be higher. The official line of the SNP. We know this because because trans people have the protection under the Hate Crime Act that women don't. And therefore, trans people, the tiny, tiny minority, much more important than half the population of Scotland. If you're a woman in Scotland and you are voting SNP, you are basically turkeys voting for Christmas. You may as well pick your children up and hand them over to these people. You don't obviously care about your children. You keep voting the SNP in. The SNP just think your children are fodder to be used. You can see that. That's why they like to ask 5-year-olds how they feel when they're touching themselves. Just imagine them all sitting there in Butte House going, oh, look at that one. Oh, yeah, knock one out. Look at this. This one likes to think of that. Whoa, that's great. Because that's all they are. We all know what the P stands for. Anyway, up to 1,000 gender-critical women and trans activists face off in Edinburgh in what was described as the first major test of Scotland's controversial new hate crime laws. The two sides were separated by safety barriers, but many women have told of their anger and anxiety at their treatment by police and at being surrounded by pro-trans activists determined to drown out their event. In a video posted online, a police officer was seen pushing a women's rights supporter away from the vicinity occupied by trans activists. Women's rights campaigners said cops did nothing to move a large group of hostile men hurling vile abuse away from a women's area. Of course not. The police are spineless. If we move the trans lot, we'll be seen as being transphobic rather than actually protecting women's lives from these thugs. How many women, this is a question, this is a genuine question, how many women will have to die at the hands of trans activists before the police realise that they're on the wrong side of this argument? I believe firmly now that the police are the enemy of the people. They're not protecting the people, they're protecting the little tiny group, the chosen one, the golden people. But the vast proportion of people out in the streets, the police are not protecting. The police are the enemy now. They're allowing this to happen to your wives, your daughters, your mothers, your sisters, your nieces, your friends. The police are actively allowing men to abuse and harm women. And they're doing nothing about it because they have no spines. Or they have no morals. Or both. Just remember this. The police are the enemy of the people. And anyone who votes for the SNP is voting for this to happen. Caroline McAllister of Women Won't Wish tweeted, trans activists were allowed to surround women who were kettled at Let Women Speak Edinburgh and shouted abuse at us, yet the police treated women much less favourably. Policing without fear or favour? I think not. The Scottish Lesbians Campaign Group agreed. Police handling was very poor. A spokeswoman said the space allocated to women was too small and really quite claustrophobic. I met a couple of women who'd felt unable to enter the kettled area because they felt uncomfortable. That's modern day policing in Scotland. Women, you're shit, according to the police. Coming up. So in Humza Yousaf, Scotland, women are second-class citizens. Odd how that doesn't surprise me. Humza Yousaf, women being second class. Seems to have a ring to it, doesn't it? For some unfathomable reason. Kellie J. Keane, J.K. Rowling, all the other women of Women Won't Waste, Let Women Speak, For Women Scotland, any other campaign group that does this. Be aware that there are a lot of men, real men, proper men, who support everything you say and do. You know, the men who've got mothers and wives and daughters and sisters and nieces. The men who think that you're not second class, who want you to be safe, who don't want you to come to harm, and who certainly don't want you abused by inadequate wankers who think putting a frock on makes them women. Thank you very much for listening. Do please hit the subscribe button, ring the bell, leave a like, leave a comment, please share the video, and I will speak to you later. Bye.